Battle of Britain, 1969, wasn't just another World War II movie. It was an airborne epic that nearly crashed before takeoff. With real Spitfires roaring through actual dogfights, entire towns evacuated for filming, and tempers exploding between the cast and crew, this film became one of the most ambitious war recreations ever attempted. What audiences never saw was the chaos that unfolded behind the camera. Pilots walking off set, historical controversies boiling over, and a production so massive that it almost bankrupted its backers. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into 15 weird facts about Battle of Britain, 1969. You never knew. From aerial near disasters to secret political pressure. And one fact at the end that's almost too unbelievable to be true. Fact number 15. The sky wasn't CGI. It was real combat flying, before computers' special effects meant real danger. Battle of Britain used over 100 vintage aircraft, more than any other film in history at the time. Many were authentic Spitfires and Messerschmitts borrowed from private collectors and foreign air forces. These planes were flown in complex choreographed formations, often just meters apart. There were no green screens, no fakes. Every barrel roll and engine scream was genuine. Pilots, some World War II veterans themselves, called the aerial scenes as close to war as cinema ever got. One sequence nearly ended in tragedy when two planes collided during a low-altitude pass, narrowly avoiding a fatal explosion. Director Guy Hamilton insisted on authenticity, even as insurers panicked. He once said, "We weren't filming a movie. We were refighting the war." What audiences saw as thrilling spectacle was in reality controlled chaos in the clouds. Fact number 14. The Spanish Air Force played the Nazis. Finding Luftwaffe aircraft in 1969 was nearly impossible. So the filmmakers struck a bizarre deal with the Franco-era Spanish Air Force. Spain still operated squadrons of German-made Heinkel bombers and Messerschmitt fighters. The production rented these planes and their pilots, who flew under swastika markings, recreated for filming. For weeks, Spanish crews took to the skies over Seville and Madrid, wearing full Nazi uniforms. It was eerie. Local villagers thought the Germans had returned, but the deal had strings attached. Spain demanded that no dialogue portray Germany as heroic, and that the Spanish pilots receive on-screen credit. Even stranger, some of the Spanish pilots were descendants of men who'd actually flown for Hitler's Luftwaffe. The result was surreal. Real Nazi planes, real pilots, and a film crew trying to make history without sparking a diplomatic scandal. Fact number 13. Laurence Olivier hated his role. Sir Laurence Olivier played Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, the stoic mastermind of Britain's defense. But Olivier reportedly despised the role. He felt the script gave Dowding too little dialogue and too much quiet stoicism. "I'm just sitting here waiting for reports," he complained during shooting. Olivier wanted to embody emotion, not paperwork. Tensions grew between him and director Guy Hamilton, who told him bluntly, "That's what the man did." He waited. Olivier delivered the role with cold authority, but left the set furious, claiming his character was written like a ghost at his own funeral. Ironically, audiences loved his restrained gravitas. Critics said he captured the calm eye of the storm. What Olivier saw as lifeless became one of the most iconic portrayals of wartime leadership ever filmed. Sometimes stillness speaks louder than speeches. Fact number 12. The film's scale nearly bankrupted its studio. The production's ambitions spiraled out of control. United Artists and producer Harry Saltzman poured millions into aerial logistics, replica uniforms, and massive airfield reconstructions. By the time shooting wrapped, Battle of Britain had cost an estimated $14 million, a colossal sum in 1969. It was one of the most expensive movies of its decade. Filming took place across England, Spain, and Ireland, with entire towns commandeered to recreate 1940s London. Thousands of extras were hired. Pyrotechnics ignited city block-sized firestorms. The insurance bills alone were astronomical. When the film underperformed at the U.S. box office, United Artists panicked. Only through strong European ticket sales did the movie avoid becoming a financial disaster. Saltzman later admitted that Battle of Britain was almost the war we lost again. The ambition paid off artistically, but nearly destroyed everyone financially involved. A victory on screen, but barely one behind it. Fact number 11. Real veterans walked off set in anger. To ensure accuracy, the filmmakers invited several Royal Air Force veterans to act as advisors, but many left after seeing what they called Hollywood distortion. One RAF officer was furious that composite characters replaced real aces. Another objected to the portrayal of women as typists, rather than codebreakers and pilots. During one scene, veterans shouted at the crew for showing pilots relaxing with brandy before combat. "We didn't drink before we flew," one insisted. "We prayed." Director Hamilton defended the dramatization, saying, "We're telling emotional truth, not literal truth." But that argument didn't calm tempers. Several veterans refused to attend the premiere. The irony? Decades later, many surviving pilots admitted the film's flying sequences were so realistic they brought them to tears. The truth hurt, but it also honored them. Fact number 10. A real crash. Nearly killed 2 pilots. Disaster struck during one of the film's most daring dogfight sequences. 2 vintage aircraft collided midair during a close formation maneuver that went horribly wrong. One pilot managed to eject seconds before impact, while the other crash-landed in a nearby field with smoke pouring from the wreckage. Miraculously, both survived, but production froze for days. The insurance company threatened to shut the movie down altogether, calling the flying sequences criminally dangerous. Director Guy Hamilton refused to stop. He told the insurers, "We are making history, not pretending to." The surviving pilots returned to the skies a week later, battered but determined. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because few films ever risk their lives this literally. What you see on screen isn't simulated danger. It's the real sky, the real fear, and the real cost of authenticity. The film's realism came from courage, not computers. Fact number 9. The cast was packed with future legends. Battle of Britain quietly assembled one of the most impressive British casts ever filmed. Michael Caine, Christopher Plummer, Trevor Howard, Ian McShane, Susanna York, and Robert Shaw all shared the screen before many became icons of 1970s cinema. It wasn't a coincidence. The producers deliberately cast actors who represented the modern face of Britain, young, ambitious, and raw. Behind the camera, tensions brewed. Caine later joked, "You could smell the testosterone on set." Robert Shaw's intensity clashed with Plummer's method approach, leading to shouting matches between takes. But that friction gave the film an edge. Their scenes pulse with tension because much of it was real. In hindsight, the movie reads like a time capsule of future greatness. Nearly every face on that airfield went on to headline a classic film within 5 years. It wasn't just history being recreated. It was talent being born. Fact number 8. Director Guy Hamilton came straight from James Bond. Before Battle of Britain, Guy Hamilton had just directed Goldfinger, one of the most successful James Bond films ever made. United Artists wanted that same scale and precision for their war epic. Hamilton brought Bond-style spectacle to the skies. He used aerial choreography like car chases and explosions that echoed 007's signature flair. But he also brought the Bond curse, budget chaos, and creative conflict. When the RAF objected to certain dramatized scenes, Hamilton stood firm, saying, "We're making drama, not propaganda." The government wasn't amused. At one point, Ministry of Defense officials threatened to withdraw access to RAF bases unless the script softened its portrayal of command blunders. Hamilton refused. He said, "If we tell it too clean, it becomes a commercial, not a film." The result was raw, unfiltered, and stunning. A war movie shot with the nerve of a spy thriller. Fact number 7. Real Spitfires were hidden in barns across Europe. By the late 1960s, original Spitfires were nearly extinct. Many were left to rust on forgotten airfields or stored in barns by collectors. To create their armada, producers launched a global hunt. They scoured old military depots in France, Denmark, and Norway. Some planes were traded for cash, others for film credit. One was reportedly found under hay bales on a Belgian farm. Every aircraft had to be restored to flying condition, a process so expensive that mechanics called it resurrecting ghosts. The planes weren't just props. They were pieces of history brought back to life. When the cameras rolled, those engines weren't acting. They were roaring memories of the real Battle of Britain. The sound you hear in the film isn't Foley work. It's the voice of history screaming through metal and sky. Fact number 6. Winston Churchill's family objected to the script. Not everyone celebrated Battle of Britain's portrayal of wartime leadership. The Churchill family publicly criticized the film for what they saw as an inaccurate representation of the Prime Minister's role in the aerial campaign. They argued that Churchill's speeches and strategic influence were underplayed in favor of Air Chief Marshal Dowding. Producer Harry Saltzman defended the choice, saying, "We were telling the story of the pilots, not the politicians." Behind closed doors, there were attempts to tone down the criticism, but the filmmakers refused. They believed the true heroes were the airmen, not the men in suits. Despite the controversy, the movie inspired renewed respect for the RAF and contributed to a surge of historical documentaries about the air war. It wasn't a tribute to politics. It was a love letter to courage in the sky. Fact number 5. A secret royal connection hid in plain sight. Few viewers realize that a member of the British royal family appeared in Battle of Britain, uncredited and unnoticed. Prince William of Gloucester, a trained pilot and cousin of Queen Elizabeth II, volunteered to fly as part of the film's aerial unit. He didn't want fame or acknowledgement. He wanted to honor the real airmen who defended Britain. The production quietly agreed. William flew several non-combat sequences in a restored Spitfire during the summer of 1968. Crew members later said he handled the aircraft with military precision and total calm, but the palace demanded no publicity. They feared the danger involved. After his tragic death in a flying accident a few years later, this hidden appearance gained new emotional weight. What began as a secret tribute became a haunting legacy. A real royal in the cockpit for a film about real heroes. Fact number 4. The explosions were so intense. They damaged homes. When recreating the London Blitz, the filmmakers didn't rely on miniatures. They built full-scale sets and detonated massive pyrotechnics that could be felt miles away. Entire neighborhoods in southern England were used for bombing scenes. Residents were warned to evacuate, but some refused to leave. Windows shattered. Roofs cracked. Dogs howled for hours afterward. The local fire brigade was on permanent standby, and one explosion accidentally set nearby hedgerows ablaze. Even the actors were shaken. Christopher Plummer later said, "It felt like we were standing in hell." Insurance adjusters filed dozens of claims for damaged property. Producer Harry Saltzman reportedly paid them out of pocket to keep production moving. Those fireballs on screen weren't studio effects. They were real detonations shaking the earth. Not simulated destruction, but history relived through real smoke and flame. Fact number 3. Michael Caine nearly quit midway through filming. Michael Caine signed on expecting another polished war film. But what he got was chaos. Endless retakes, unpredictable weather, aerial delays that stretched shooting from months to almost a year. At one point, he told a crew member, "I'm starting to think the Germans will win before we finish this picture." Caine's frustration peaked when his uniform caught fire during an effects test gone wrong. He stormed off, set vowing never to return. Director Guy Hamilton personally visited his hotel that night and convinced him to stay. Their heated conversation ended with Caine agreeing on one condition: that his character be given more emotional weight. The rewrite worked. His performance became one of the film's highlights. Tired, defiant, deeply human. He didn't just play a weary pilot. He became one. Fact number 2. The movie angered both sides of history. Battle of Britain walked a dangerous tightrope, honoring courage without glorifying war. But in doing so, it angered almost everyone. German veterans accused it of demonizing their pilots. British officials felt it exposed too many of the RAF's flaws. Even the Spanish government, who had lent planes, complained the Nazi depiction was too realistic. Censors trimmed several scenes for theatrical release, including a brutal aerial sequence that showed pilots burning alive. The footage reportedly still exists in private archives, but has never been restored. Decades later, war historians praised the film for refusing to sanitize the air war. It showed fear, exhaustion, the emotional collapse behind the victory. It wasn't propaganda. It was truth through fire. And truth, as the film proved, never pleases everyone. Fact number 1. The final shot hid a secret message. The closing image, an empty sky filled with drifting clouds, wasn't in the original script. It was Guy Hamilton's last-minute addition after weeks of debate. He wanted to end not with victory, but with silence. The quiet after chaos. The ghosts of pilots who never came home. Hidden in that shot is a coded farewell. The faint outline of contrails in the distance forms the number 303, a tribute to the Polish squadron whose bravery helped turn the tide of war. Few noticed it, but Hamilton confirmed it years later. That final frame wasn't random. It was gratitude, written in vapor and light. The war was over. The debt remained. Bonus fact: the movie inspired a real fighter restoration movement. After the film's release, aviation enthusiasts across Britain began restoring forgotten World War II aircraft. Many credited Battle of Britain for sparking the revival. Old wrecks pulled from swamps were rebuilt. Abandoned hangars reopened. By the mid-1970s, a dozen new Spitfires were back in the air. The film didn't just commemorate history, it reignited it. Because sometimes art doesn't just remember the past, it gives it wings again. Battle of Britain, 1969, remains one of the boldest war films ever made. A monument of danger artistry and obsession with truth. Every roar of an engine, every plume of smoke, every trembling hand on the throttle was real. If you love stories where courage meets chaos, hit like, subscribe, and fly with us again next time. Because legends never die. They just take off once more into the clouds.